Hey MVPs, Rico Notes here. Going to talk to you guys about the win total for Utah next year. It's a futures bet, meaning you have to place it before the season starts. You see it here. The books have it at 9.5 wins for Utah. Are they going to win 9 games or 10 games? That's what the books are essentially saying. They moved to the Big 12. Let's go see what it is. By the way, keep track of that. Under 9.5 is positive money. So they really expect this team to get at least 10 wins. They had a rough 2023 season. Let's go look at it. 2023, they opened up with Florida, beat Florida, but Florida was a terrible team. I called that early in the season. If you remember correctly, I told you guys Florida wasn't going to win more than 3 games. Everybody was irate. They told me they were going to be great, and I said, nah, they got Graham Mertz. Turns out Graham Mertz wasn't the problem, but they still didn't win a lot of games. They beat Baylor. Congratulations. Then they go out and beat Weber State, and then that very unimpressive win over UCLA. And what you'll notice here is they didn't score a lot of points. Their offense struggled immensely. Remember, they played all season without Cam Rising, their star quarterback, or at least their leader among quarterbacks. And it's been one of those things where they managed to win games, and beating Cal and USC are very impressive, especially with the team that they had last year. But you were going to see scores like this, 21-7, putting up 6 points against Oregon, being held to 18 against Arizona. It's just, and in the embarrassing bowl game performance against Northwestern. What it really comes down to is they don't have phenomenal game-changing players. At least they didn't last year. And they don't have the speed that you would expect teams to have. They're a lot like Kansas State, meaning you can develop 3-star players and make them better, even make them NFL guys. But that's not going to bridge the gap between the 5-star players. So while you look at recruiting classes and Utah gets the most out of their 3 stars, there are 5 stars out there that potential, the ceiling is there. And that's where Oregon and USC and Washington and Arizona are kind of living, right? They're finding those 4- and 5-star guys, and their potential is so much greater than anything you could develop. Kyle Whittingham's getting ready to get out of the game here, the head coach. Has been a phenomenal coach. And I think that when you look at rosters and if they're ever equivalent, you give the coin flip to Utah because of their coaching. Their coaching is, it's a known thing. You can't deny it. It's been happening for years now. They've been great. So when I go look at this team last year, quarterbacks don't matter. All these guys are gone. Bryson Barnes hit the transfer portal. Nate Johnson hit the transfer portal. I don't know about Luke, but none of these guys will see the field. It's irrelevant. Terrible quarterback play, and that impacted everything, right? Statistically, if you don't get first downs, you don't get touchdowns. If you don't get first downs, you don't get rushing yards. If you don't get first downs, you're trailing and you got to pass, and those guys still don't complete passes, so no receiving yards. It's just a long season, and it's a daunting one. Running backs, Quentin Jackson, star running back, he actually transferred to Arkansas. Good player, gone. Jalen Glover is back, but he won't be the starting running back. He's still a backup. He's not bad. He's just, I think, your average FBS level running back. The other, Sione Vaki gone, got drafted. All these guys are gone. Michael Bernard is back. Michael Bernard's been around for a while. He's probably ready to be the star running back. I shouldn't have said star running back. He's probably ready to be the running back. If you don't remember Michael Bernard, he wears number 2. He's also the guy who filled in at corner in the Rose Bowl and tried to cover JSN. If you remember 2 years ago, JSN put up 300 yards in the Rose Bowl, and everybody said he's the greatest receiver they've ever seen. Well, it turns out he's not. He was just doing it against a backup running back who was playing corner that day. Shout out to Michael Bernard for just being a team player and willing to do whatever it takes to play both sides of the ball. That's why you see Sione Vaki here as a safety. He was also playing running back. I think he's playing running back in the NFL now. Nonetheless, Michael Bernard is back and should be the running back. He was dealing with injuries last year, but we'll get to that. Okay. Receivers, Vele, gone. Parks is back. Mikey Matthews, gone. Sione Vaki, once again, gone. Landon King, back. I believe Yasmin's gone. Jalen Glover's back, gone. It's a weird way that they do things, but we'll talk about it. Yikes. Got their kicker, Cole Becker. I believe he was a transfer from Colorado, if I remember correctly. He was a great kicker, by the way. Defensively, obviously Cole Bishop was drafted. They have some guys returning, but let me say something. For the amount of plays that they were on defense last year, the lack of turnovers, sacks, not really sacks, because they had sacks collectively as a team. Well, it was really one player, but The lack of turnovers and game-changing plays is just it's alarming. What I saw on tape, right? I go back and watch tape on all these teams, and I've been watching tape on Utah, and I just see guys that are fundamentally sound, that are making tackles and making plays, but they're not like changing the game. They're not getting you the ball back. They're not, and that could have been fatigue because they were always on defense last year, but it didn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. They lost their 12 sacks in Jonah Ellis. He got drafted in the NFL. Yeah, we'll talk about this at length here when I get to the depth chart. So going over to the transfer portal, though, what did they grab? I'll talk about it on the depth chart. But they grabbed Damian Alford, who I'm excited about, tall wide receiver from Syracuse. Syracuse leading receiver, had a pretty dominant season at Syracuse, who had terrible quarterback play. So to see a guy who's still productive with terrible quarterbacks, I like that. Damian Alford coming over. Dorian Singer hoping to revitalize himself. This was a first-team All-Pac-12 guy. Went to USC, found out, I can't play here. And he ended up like fifth or sixth string. So he just isn't the 5-star guy that you're thinking of. But you see it here. He was a 3-star guy. They improved him to 4 when he transferred. But he's a 3-star kid who's maximizing his potential. And when he played at Arizona and when he got first team, it's because, man, I go back and watch the tape, the best corners and the coverage is all rolled over to T-Mac. It's all rolled over to the slot receiver. And you have Dorian Singer wide open. He's getting the third best corner on every single team. That didn't happen at USC. And is it going to happen here? Maybe. We'll talk about that as well. Gilman, I'm surprised he's not starting. He should be starting. Cameron Calhoun's actually really good on tape, if you ask me. Transferred in from Michigan after 1 year. That's a young man. I think he can find the field. Tyson Lyons, not really going to find the field. Anthony Woods, I wish he would have been the running back. He's a transfer from Idaho. He was my pick. He was going to be my hidden gem on this team. Unfortunately, he's injured for the season. Won't be here. Carson Ryan transfer didn't really make sense to me. Shout out to him. Kene Isvan already left. He jumped in the portal in the winter, got there, left in the spring. So let's go look at the roster. We'll start at the top. Wide receivers. Wide receivers on this team, for me, don't really move me like that. Ash is always barking in every video. It's crazy. Come on, Ash. What are you mad about? Relax. So Money Parks is their big play threat. If you saw the spring game, Cam Rising has a ton of continuity with Money Parks, constantly finding him down the field. It's cool. I think that there's a real combination there between Cam Rising and Money Parks. Dorian Singer, obviously, known goods, going to come back and do some things. Don't worry about any of these backup wide receivers. Micah Pittman is a really good blocking wide receiver. Dealing with injuries, originally started at Oregon, transferred to Florida State, then transferred over here to Utah. I'm not too excited about Micah Pittman, but these top two give me some type of dynamic plays here. I'm ranking, just so you guys know, I have like a ranking system. Utah's wide receiver room on a scale from 1 to 10, I have them at 7, kind of equivalent to Baylor's wide receiver room, just a shade below Colorado's. So they're fine. It's the strength of their offense, by the way, outside of the tight ends, and we'll get to that. Offensive line, not what you would expect on a Utah offensive line. They're in a year where some of these guys are first-year starters. The entire left side is first-year starters, and then their center, Johnny, being there so long, and he's not like a solidified guy that's been dominating. So they're replacing a lot of talent. On the right side, studs. The Fano brothers, Spencer Fano and his brother down here, Logan, these two guys are monsters, and they'll get in the rotation eventually. But Fano obviously started last year. So you got two studs on the right side, so they're probably good on one half of the line. But the blind side, Cam Rising, like he needs linemen, and we'll get to it. Tight ends, I give them a 10. They might have the best tight end room in America. They might. I know everybody believes in Georgia, and then there's individual tight ends everywhere that are pretty decent. But Brant Kuithe and Landon King are truly special. You turn on the tape, they're really special. They're so good, they could lead a team in receiving. And just for full disclosure, Brant Kuithe did. And I think it was back in 2022, 2 years ago. No, that was Dalton Kincaid. You remember, they're down Dalton Kincaid, right? That's why they didn't win the Pac-12. Let's go back to 2021. There he is. There's Brant leading the team in receiving. So it was like 3 years ago, and he's coming back from injury. So when you lose guys to injury, it can be a problem. Brant and Cam Rising, all spring long, wearing those special jerseys. No one can touch them. So you see them in the spring game, they're lighting it up. I watched the spring game and I kind of laughed. It was to showcase Cam Rising being accurate, timing was down and everything, but there was no pass rush on him. Nobody was allowed to touch him. What you got to know is part of Cam Rising's game is running. He rushed for over 400 yards. He is a dual threat quarterback to some extent, extending the play at least. So his ability to run is part of his game. If he doesn't have the ability to run, he's not special anymore. And if you go back and look, some of the things he's never really been that guy to throw an immense amount of touchdowns. Remember, Tavion Thomas, when they won the Pac-12 back in 2021, Tavion Thomas, 21 touchdowns, 1,100 yards. Like, you need a running back to do that. They don't have that running back. They don't have that running back at all. You need a defense with Cole Bishop. You need a defense with star NFL players, Clark Phillips III, that are, or star players in college that are there. They don't have that right now. Okay, 2022, they won the Pac-12. Cam Rising is not the guy. He's barely getting over 3,000 yards. You don't want this guy throwing the ball 500 times a year. But for and not even 30 touchdowns, right? He's never been a statistical guy like that. It's you had a star running back, you had a bunch of running backs, and you have Cam Rising willing to run the ball and get first downs. If you take that away from his skill set, and you don't know if he's healthy enough to run for first downs, you start getting a little worried. You start wondering what he's going to do. Is he just going to check it down to his tight ends? Are those tight ends going to draw the coverage off of Money Parks and Dorian Singer? Are they going to be open? That's the whole theory behind it. The theory is the box will be heavy. They'll have double coverage. Safeties will be rolled up on tight ends, and now you get one-on-one coverage on the receivers. Can they make the plays? Well, Cam Rising can make the throw. Yeah, he's experienced, but it all feels kind of mid, if you will, mid. I'm sure it'll be a potent combination and hard to stop. I'm sure. Go to defense. I am not impressed with this defense at all. It says a lot of Singers, but these guys don't, like I said, they don't make a ton of plays. They don't move me like that. I've watched it over and over, and they're just kind of, they're just kind of stagnant, and they don't move me, man. Keenan Johnson coming over. This is a guy, for him to start at Utah is very telling, right? He just transferred in from Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's secondary was porous. It was atrocious. And Keenan Johnson's part of that secondary. He wasn't even he's played for a lot of years, but he wasn't a bona fide starter till last year. So to see him come in here and start, I think Cameron Calhoun's going to get on the field. I think Cameron Calhoun has way more upside and is probably better than Keenan Johnson. And I know I'm not at practice every day, but I'm just telling you, Cameron Calhoun pops on tape to me, looks like a better player. This looks like a liability in the secondary. And none of these guys look super special. I'm surprised Gilman's not starting. I really am. That's a whole nother story. So that being said, I feel like Utah is benefiting from an extremely, extremely easy schedule. In the Big 12 for the first time, and when you start looking at who they play and don't play, it's pretty beautiful. So they open up with Southern Utah and Baylor, and then Utah State. So they should win all three of those games, theoretically, is what everybody's saying, right? Then they go on the road to Oklahoma State, and they play Arizona in back-to-back weeks. I personally don't think they match up well with either team. I personally don't think they have the seniority or the firepower to keep up with either one of those teams. Those teams are senior-laden, return everybody that matters, return their entire offensive lines, return their defense. It's all intact. Like, those teams are for real to me. Those are some of the two top teams in the Big 12. And every time I see rankings and I see things like preseason rankings and all this, they always put Utah there. And I'm just like, what am I missing? I know who Utah is. I know the players. What am I missing? They're not, this isn't their year. Half their offensive line is brand new. Their entire defense has no production returning that's worth talking about. I'm being so serious. And you're banking all this on a journeyman quarterback or a guy who's been around and kind of lets the running back score all the touchdowns and the tight end do the work. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. He's not super dynamic like that. 2 weeks to prepare for Arizona State. Going to beat them. Going to beat TCU. Going to beat Houston. And this is where you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins. 2 weeks to prepare for BYU. 7, 8, 9, 10. So everybody goes, they're going to win 10 games and only lose those 2 ranked games. Maybe they can win those 2 ranked games, supposedly, right? And this is why I assess position groups. I'm going to tell you guys, I don't like the way they match up with Iowa State, number one, towards the end of the season. I really don't. I think Iowa State has a senior-laden defense. The entire offensive line returns, better offensive weapons. when you watch Utah, the games they struggle in are games they can't keep up in scoring. And there are teams out there that can put up an insane amount of points. And I know you're like, well, their defense can stop that. No, their defense cannot. They don't have that defense you're thinking of. They don't have the sacks coming off the edge. They don't have the secondary that's physically imposing. They just don't have it. They're missing everything that matters to me. I think they just lost a ton of NFL talent over the last 2 years, and it's not going to be the same that you're anticipating. Let me say this to you guys. They got to run the table on everybody except for Oklahoma State and Arizona to get the over. They got to run the table. And I'm telling you, I don't like the way they match up against Iowa State, UCF's offense, Colorado. I really don't like the way they match up against these three teams down here. And I don't like the way they match up against TCU and even Baylor. Teams that can score are problematic for them. Now, we can forget Baylor's defense, but I really feel like TCU, Iowa State, UCF, Colorado, all these teams can score with them. So I just named 4 teams. And only one of those 4 have to win to beat this team. I think it's very probable. And I actually think it's worth the value bet. So when you pull up the chart, I'm on the under. I don't mean to sound, defeated or anything. I'm just being real with you guys. The under is 1 unit because it's a value bet. I've got Utah winning 9 games. They lose at least one of those games I just talked about. Iowa State, TCU, Baylor, UCF. They just don't match up well. Colorado. They just don't match up well with those teams. Those teams can actually score points. And in a shootout, we don't know what's going to happen. Another thing, what kind of durability does Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe have? Are they ready for contact? We don't know. They've been held out of contact for 2 years now. Literally for 2 years. We don't know what it's going to be like. And as the season goes on, we'll get a better feel for it. But I just feel like they can slip up and lose somewhere. It just doesn't feel right to me. No way that they run the table in a daunting Big 12. In a daunting Big 12. And they did give them all their old Pac-12 teams. But for me, TCU has a better offensive line. TCU has a chance to score points. And I know it's in Utah. Look, man, I see it. They're at home games. Home games. All the games I'm talking about are at home. That's a little-ass stadium, bro. Shout out to Princely. Hey, look, man, I just believe in Iowa State. I believe in Iowa State. I believe that's the one they won't win. Your friends don't know, but Rico knows. I hope you guys take the time to watch all the futures videos. Watch them all. Get your bets in before the season starts. We're going to win a ton of money. We're going to get it right. I will start doing the individual videos for each matchup, but right now it feels pretty good. So this is the Utah one. Hope you get it right. Some MVPs are better than others. Peace.